And welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Unbreakable Podcast Network. I am Kait Dinunzio, author and founder of the Unbreakable Legacy Movement and the book Unbreakable: From Abandonment to Abundance and the Strength to Lead. I really appreciate you joining me. I know it's just me. There's no Josie, there's no Grace, there's no wonderful guest, but it is a rainy ass Sunday. And so I thought, why not jump in and answer and respond to some of the questions that I've been receiving in my inbox. I received a ton of feedback from you guys on the last episode. Everything from confirmation of the concepts and thanks for the articles. I think people just felt seen, and I love that. So keep the comments coming. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please go ahead and do that. It does help boost us in the algorithm. So I have a whole bunch of questions. I probably have 12 or 15 questions here that have come in from different avenues. So I have people who text me. We have conversations. I get voice notes. Want a big shout out to Aaliyah. Thanks so much for the lash glue recommendation. Can't wait to give that a shot. And I just appreciate hearing from you so much. So do keep these questions coming. So let's dive in. I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet so that I can get to as many of these as possible. Okay, so the first one. This one actually hits really well. I've been doing everything right for months, but it doesn't seem that anything is changing. How do I keep going when I can't see any progress? This couldn't have been a more timely question. This one came in just this morning, and I feel like it's kind of the universe being a universi with me, because I have, for the past month, well, actually for probably the past 8 weeks, been dieting, just trimming some fat off, no intention to compete. And I can tell you that my weight has not changed in a month, despite the fact that I have increased cardio, decreased food, my output in the gym is really going. And, you know, what it really comes down to is a lot of times we have work that we do and it doesn't show until the result is ready. And that can be a really frustrating thing. And this is where I think we go into less of a problem solving method and mode and more into an emotional regulation mode. It's not that progress isn't happening. It's just happening in a way that is invisible until it's actually really truly visible. So what I did was I sat and I came up with a couple of first threads for us here. So quit measuring only your outcomes. The second would be write down 3 things that you've been consistent with over the past month. And I want you to do a bit of a consistency audit. And that audit will give you all of the information that you need to know to say, am I actually hitting the mark, or do I just think I'm hitting the mark? Because when I look back into my logbooks and I see all of my statistics and all of my metrics, and let me tell you, I keep a lot of them, it's undeniable that something great isn't about to happen. So that's that one. Remember, consistency is progress. All right. I'm pretty sure, you guys, that is the fastest time I've ever answered a question on this podcast. Oh, this is a really good one. I know exactly what I need to do. I just can't seem to make myself do it. What's wrong with me? It's interesting because I was having a conversation about Unbreakable with somebody this week. And one of the things that I consistently recognize is that very few people are cracking open section 6 of the book. And section 6 of the book is called This is the Work. And maybe it's the word work that really freaks people out. I don't know. I mean, I like work, so it doesn't bother me. But like, I've literally designed pages of things that you can contemplate, ponder, or do to get yourself out of a rut. So when I get questions like this, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think that you have a knowledge problem. I don't think that it's anything like that at all. I think you have a decision problem, and I think you have an action problem. And when we think about it from the terms of action, action creates clarity, right? And I tell people this all the time. Action kills anxiety, as does presence. Being present and in the moment and focusing on what needs your attention instead of the next Netflix series or the doom scrolling on this or whatever it is. That is unproductive, that stops you from reaching your goals. Those are the things that are stealing your time and your attention. So this is when I think about it from a first threads perspective, I would look at it from the perspective of 1%. Because sometimes, I mean, I get it. Like you look at trying to drive change. A lot of people, for example, with weight loss, right? They want to go in all in and they want to get absolutely shredded or they want to lose a bunch of weight. And I admire that. I think it's great. I think everybody should want to be their healthiest, best self. I love that. But if you go out and you think that you're just going to crash down, hit 1200 calories, do, absolutely everything to the letter and you're just going to adjust to it on a Monday because you said you would, it's not realistic. It's too much too fast. And so go with the 1% mentality. If you want to do something or be something better than where you are right now, then what you can do is just take the first step. Just take the first action because 1% better tomorrow plus 1% better on Tuesday, that's 2% in 1 week. So take it off in smaller bites and chunks because one of the things that people fail to realize is that change is actually a process. And when you start to initiate the change process, you inherently find ups and downs inside of that. And if you throw way too much into it, when you hit your first down, that's it. You're down. Okay. So this next one is really good as well. I have a whole chapter on this in the book and it's called The Grief of Growth. I love my friends, but I don't feel like I fit in with my friend group anymore. Does this make me a bad person and how should I handle it? And when I think about the changes that I've gone through, listen, I mean, I'm an expansionist. When we think about like social networking has different levels and I'm an expansionist. I have a global network of people. Hi to all of you. And I love every single one of you. And I value each one of the relationships that I have and they're very unique. I value relationships. I value being present with somebody. But just because I've become friends with somebody and I've gone through that 11-3-6, right? So 11 instances of spending time with them for 3 hours or more over 6 months doesn't mean that we're always going to mesh like peas and carrots. What that means is that I have people who are maybe seasonal in my life, right? Where, I think about, some of the people who, when our kids played sports together, that was the only time we would ever see each other. But we have really good, healthy relationships. If I needed help moving, could I phone them? Probably. Would they show up? Probably. And, so I think the identity factor of who we are as a result of our friend group maybe needs to be looked at because if we were to say like just one friend group, I don't have just one friend group. I have different pockets and different pods of people. And I work with an athlete and we often talk about identity. We talk about the identity using hats. Right. And so the hat that I wear when I'm bodybuilding is not the same hat that I wear when I'm at work. And when I'm at work, I'm not wearing the hats of maybe some of my more bombastic friendships that I have. I have friends that I will, get completely silly with, and I would never do that with a client group. Right. And so it's just, there are different seasons and different relationships, and sometimes that's okay. If you feel like fundamentally the value system of you and your friends are no longer a match, that's a different conversation. And when I look at this question, it it doesn't make you a bad person because friends are friends, right? But I think you have to acknowledge the things that are happening and just keep the communication lines open, right? And be willing to have a hard conversation if there is a values misalignment, or maybe just be willing to disappear in silence because sometimes that's easier. And I have been known to do that. I have people, and I wrote about these people in my book, that were fantastic friends, people who I spent a lot of time with, people who I poured and invested hours of my life into every single week. And in the end, we just had fundamental differences. And that doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that what was important to them is not important to me. And if it's something that, kind of offends my value system, then it's up to me to make that decision. And I don't need to make a grand exit. That's not important. There are very few times when I light something off and leave it to burn. There's no productivity in that. It steals your harmony and your peace. I oftentimes am the type of person who just slips away. And, I mean, just this weekend, there was a fundamental values fracture between somebody who has actually stayed in my home several times. And her behavior and her conduct and her temper tantrums and the purpose of how she got her way was didn't affect me or impact me really at all. But I just thought it was a really disgusting use of time, and other people's energy was sucked and stress was placed on people unnecessarily. And I just thought to myself, yeah, that's not somebody that I want to have a relationship with. And it's not somebody that I'm going to allow to have a window into my life. And so I went to her Facebook page, which is our only method of communication, and I clicked unfriend. I don't need to tell her these things. I'm not that important in her life. I realized that, because if I was important in her life, our values wouldn't be in such direct contravention, right? And so those decisions sometimes can be made for us. So play it as you will, but I think the world is in enough conflict as it is. And if things just fundamentally aren't working for you and your friend group, maybe it's time to find new friends. How about that for some deep topics, right, guys? Okay, must stay hydrated. Talking a lot. Okay, let's have a look at this next one. Oh, this is one. I've actually had this one 3 times in a variation. And really, this one is about partnership, and it's about couples. And I've had 3 different individuals come to me and in one variation or another ask this question. My husband and I aren't fighting. We've just stopped growing together. Is it possible for our relationship to survive this? Yes, it is. It's absolutely possible for your relationship to continue. I can't see why it wouldn't. You know, I think it's a farce to think that you go and you marry somebody at 20 years old and you stay together for 60 years and you're the same person. No, you're not. I mean, life happens, right? We change interests. Like, you might be an athlete when you meet, and then maybe you sustain an injury and that changes your trajectory. Or maybe you have children and something catastrophic happens in your family. Maybe you lose a parent. Like, there's so many different things that happen in life. We are individuals. And I think that we need to pour into our marriage, and we need to be present in those relationships that are important to us. But I think it's ridiculous to think that as you become different people, after children come, after children leave home, after careers start or end or change or shift, or you go bankrupt or your house burns down, like all of these different things, they change who you are as a person. And I think what is really important is to just make sure that you're communicating, that you're having the conversations, that you're keeping that relationship alive. And I do believe that the biggest violator to a marriage or a relationship having sustainable long-term roots is the inability to communicate your needs and talk about what's important to you without fear, without retribution. And it sometimes takes a lot of time to get into that kind of a relationship or to find yourself in something that healthy. But that doesn't just happen. It's something that you have to build, right? I mean, everybody go back to the honeymoon period of your relationship and think about how great it was, how beautiful it was, how everything was wonderful. The birds always sang, the sun always shined, even on rainy days. It was great. You had those butterflies in your stomach. Fabulous. If the relationship isn't vile, if it's not violent, right? Whether it's physical, emotional, social, financial, my recommendation is to just have a hard conversation. Put it out on the table and just say, hey, it'd be great to go for a drive. I feel a little disconnected. I feel like we've grown in different ways. How much does this get in the way? How much do video games get in the way? How much does friend drama get in the way? Actions express priority. Where you put your attention is where you will have the greatest return, right? You think about it in terms of, if you didn't ever water your lawn, would your lawn ever be green? I mean, outside of the fact, if you live in Alberta, it's been raining for like 100 years. But you have to put effort into what it is that you want. It will not just simply happen and sustain based off of those first moments. So, do I think that it's possible? Can a relationship survive differences and growth? Yeah, it can. In my house, we live 2 very separate lives together, and that's a choice. And we have those conversations. We have sacred moments. We have values around birthdays and anniversaries and holidays that are important to one another. And we prioritize those because if actions express priorities, have the conversation. Because if you care about the relationship, then care enough to have a hard conversation. Okay. This is a good one. This one I've had a couple times. How do I stop caring about what people think about me so much? Well, I mean, the first thing is I can understand. I can understand why you care. We're cultivated to care. We're taught to care. When we're domesticated in kindergarten, we're told it's important that these people who are around you, that you play nice, right? And if you don't know what that means, well, you're going to find out, right? So I think, it's something that I've always grappled with. I think that, the desire to be wanted, to be loved, right? When you're abandoned as a child, it's very hard to overcome that abandonment wound. And so for me, for years, I was very performative and I did anything and everything that I could in order to get the approval of other people, particularly women. And it was maternal facing women. There's a story in my book about conditional love. And, I talk about going to church. And I was a little girl and the pastor's wife came to me and she was a Texas Baptist. And she said to me, "Oh, Katie, you can't come to the Lord's house and worship him in sweatpants." I was 5, maybe. And so I went home and I told my dad I needed a dress. And so he went and he dug one out of our dusty, gross old cellar and washed it a couple of times. And I wore it the next week. And when I showed up, I walked in and she saw me and she was so beautiful. Like she was like a beacon of light. She used to wear those big billowing skirts and like a really nice blouse. And she had her hair done and it was brown. And she just always smelled like Dove soap. Like she was just beautiful. And I was just this little ragamuffin who ran around barefoot and had to beg my dad for a dress that still smelled like a dirt cellar. And I can remember she leaned down and she went, "Katie, the Lord is rejoicing at your obedience." Obedient. Like I couldn't even be accepted in church because I wasn't obedient. And you know, this was further driven home, and this story is also in the book, about when our guidance counselor, who we would see at the elementary school, would say to us, we would go in and we would be drawing with those Mr. Sketchers markers, the ones that are like sniffy, and it's like, I don't know who thought of that. Here, kids, go and huff these markers. Um, and we were in his office and we were coloring one day, and my sister and I, it was both of us, we were getting a counseling session after our mom had left. And so we're like, ha 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 ha, ha, just having a grand old time. And this man said, "Okay, girls, it's time to stop. It's time to stop coloring. Let's have a conversation." And we're like, ha ha ha, because, we're 5 and 7 or 6 and 8 or whatever age we were, very little. And he goes, "Wow, you guys aren't very good listeners. Maybe that's why your mom," right? So from my earliest years, I was told, you must, in no uncertain terms, you must fit in. You must do what people want you to do. And this led me down the path of many, many, many bad relationships, volatile friendships in some cases, trying to save people because I figured maybe if I saved somebody, they would be kind to me. And at the end of the day, none of it matters because you're never really who you want or should be as a result of trying to show up for somebody else. And there are two things that I say here. The first thing is validation is for parking. I say it all the time. And I say it as much as I do because sometimes I think I'm still trying to convince myself, if I'm being honest with you. I care. I care. And I care deeply about the things that matter to me. And here I am on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok trying to share the good word of doing things differently. And frankly, I really hope you guys like me. But if you don't, okay. I guess I just won't lose any sleep over that because I don't even know you. I would love to know you. So drop a comment, like, share. But you see what I'm saying, right? So one of the things that I do every year, and I've talked about this on the podcast a couple of times, but I haven't talked about it for a while because it's June, but I always pick a word and I try and live my life to that word every single year. And one year, I mean, everybody was picking like authenticity really came strong to me, but I feel like I'm pretty authentic. But one word that stood out to me, and this was 2023, was unapologetic. And unapologetic was a monumental year for me because I really did suspend that little voice that sat here and said, people are going to laugh at you. They're going to make fun of you. You're going to look stupid. And I was just truly unapologetic. If I wanted something, I asked for it or I took it or I did it. Right. And then I mean, like that year I did 3 bodybuilding competitions. I won 5 overall titles. I leveled up in my career. I landed some pretty big work. It was a really great year. 2023 was a monumental year. And that was the year that really kind of changed the way that I approach and think about what other people think about me. And even though my stylist is going to watch this and I'm going to say something, your opinion of me is kind of like the back of my hair. It's none of my business. Jordan, I know the back of my hair really is my business. One time I did my hair before going to the airport and I forgot like a whole strand. And like all day as I was traveling, I just kept touching this strand of like curly hair. It was terrible. So I do care. So I think that's really all I really want to say about that. I just think that, suspend it. Find something that you can lean in on. And I mean, like this, let's be honest though, like don't be too weird about it. Don't be like, look at me. Like, just go about your life. Do what makes you happy. Go to bed and have a full heart at the end of the day. Okay. It's really interesting, actually. I got another one about people feeling lonely, even though they're surrounded by people, which is a huge topic of conversation on one of our last podcasts. And so we have a couple of articles. We'll link those back down in here in terms of how to build relationships, particular adult relationships. This stimulated a couple of really great conversations across a couple of my friend groups. And one in particular was, particularly changing friend groups after having a breakdown in a marriage or a long-term relationship and being able to come back from that, because it's not that people were recruited one way or another in the breakdowns in relationships that I had, but it was that, they had loyalty to the person that they came into the relationship with. And then I think that there's also a part where, I've been a part of a friend group where we've seen separation and divorce. And in some cases, people just don't behave the way that feels good for me. And so I tend to back off because I don't want to be a part of somebody using their kids as a pawn in a divorce. I don't want to be a part of somebody making up lies and stories and serving secret subpoenas and just trying to be nasty for the sake of being nasty. Like that's not who I am as a person. My harmony is far too important to me. So like I can see it from both sides of the table. But that was a really interesting conversation. And I think the other piece that I would just say here is that it's presence. I walk a lot. And when I'm out in my community, it amazes me how tuned out people are, and deliberately. Like people will see me coming from down the block and they will literally do everything in their power to not have to engage with me. And sometimes I just kind of let it go. And other times I'm really obnoxious and I like high five everybody on the trail. And, I try and be a sunshine, or I say hello to people, or, I also acknowledge that not everybody is an extrovert. I know that not everybody is neurotypical. I know that not everybody likes to speak when they're out on a walk, but we're in a really lonely time in our society where everything is divisive. There's nothing but violence and war and ignorance going on around us. What's stopping you from being kind and being present? And sometimes I think presence can be painful, because when you're present, sometimes you have to think about the things that maybe you don't want to think about. And maybe that's where the work becomes even more relevant for you. And the other part that I think I would touch on that we talked about quite a bit in the other podcast is, being present and being there, but not really being fully seen and not valued for what it is that you bring to the table. In a lot of cases, people find that because of the way they look or the way that they present themselves. And so my advice to people like that is just keep trying, keep showing up, keep being yourself. I'm the type of person where I look at who you are as a person, and that's the person I want to be around. I don't care how much money you make or how much you don't make. I don't care what color your skin is. I value the things that are important to you. And as long as you're swimming and you're putting your best foot forward, I'm always willing to have a conversation with you, and I'm always willing to give you advice or guidance. But remember, time is the only thing we can't get back. I'm not spending my time on people who aren't spending any investment on themselves. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way as well, right? So put the effort in and put yourself out there and be willing to go out of your comfort zone. Leave your house. Remember, don't be a mushroom. This is one that I've gotten twice now, and we'll end here with this one. And it is, how do I know when it's time to let someone go out of my life? And, I think I talked about a couple of these just a few minutes ago where sometimes the value system doesn't align. And I mean, listen, I understand that I'm not typical in that most people want or know, like they need to know why someone is doing what they're doing, or they have to share their opinion. I mean, my peace is so expensive. And what I mean by that is I don't need to be right. I don't need to convince you of anything. Um, I don't fight with people on the internet. I don't provide my opinion on the internet because I'm not that important, unless it's like my YouTube channel, in which case I am providing quite a bit of my opinion, but also my professional opinion. Uh, it's very interesting when you think about it. But I mean, I don't type and I don't put mean comments on people on Instagram. I don't do shit like that. And when I think about the grief of growth, I think about, just knowing when it's time to just drift and move to the next level and the next peak, as we talk about in Unbreakable. Also recognizing that not everybody's going to want to go to the same peak as you, right? Um, and sometimes the healthiest relationship you're ever going to have with someone is one with distance. And a very interesting conversation that I had even just earlier this weekend was about my biological mother. And, if I go into that a little bit, I mean, like, that's the one relationship that most people aren't willing to sacrifice or give up. And I really worked hard. I spent a lot of decades of my life really trying to have that relationship with someone who saw me as a dollar sign. It was, what could I give to her or how could I make her look? And that was really all that mattered. It was always status and it was always aesthetics and it was always money. I don't think that I can think of even 5 times in the past 10 years that my mother had texted me just to check in and see how I was, or to ask about her granddaughter, or how my work was going, or how bodybuilding was, or how football was for Aaron. Like, there were so many things where it was just a text with a cute little buzz name that she gave me when I was little, Schnooky. And that, I would get a text and it would just be, "Hi, Schnooky." And I would just know the next guilt trip would be coming. Oh, I can't afford gas, or I can't afford fresh vegetables, or I can't afford my cleaning supplies, or, whatever it was, there was always an ask attached to it. And sometimes she would seed the conversation on a Sunday and the ask wouldn't come until a Wednesday. But I always knew that it was coming and it would stress me out, and I would let it stress me out because I would respond. And, when the last, like, the straw that broke the camel's back, I was actually at my father's house cleaning out his belongings, going through some of his most intimate things, a couple of drawers that my mama bear didn't want to have to deal with on her own. And she phoned me while I was there. And I did not think it was her because she hid her phone number. So it said no caller ID. And I thought that it was my daughter because she was staying home by herself. And so I had picked up the phone thinking, like, I had just seen on the doorbell camera that she had come home from work. And so I picked up the phone thinking it was her. And it was my biological mother. And so it was, "Hey, Shnooky, how's it going?" She lays down a bunch of things that she's stressed about. And I'm just like, she's like, I said, "Well, I'm not at home right now." And she goes, "Oh, where are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm in Manitoba." And she goes, "Oh, are you at daddy's house?" Like, come on. Ugh. So, she proceeds to have this conversation. I moved into the office. I, apologized to my stepmom, and she proceeded to say what it was that she wanted. And then I heard my stepdad come into the room and he was like, "Oh, did you tell her about that gun that I saw?" And, just like, nudge, nudge, she'll go and pick that up for me. And I thought, okay, I just need to be diplomatic about how I get out of this call. And so I let the call go. And that was the last time I ever spoke to my mother. And that was in 2022. It is now 2026. And, every so often I go through the obituaries to see if she's passed away. I mean, she's in her mid 70s now, late 70s. And what was interesting though is she then texted me, and then she called me no caller ID. Then she called me with her caller ID showing. Then she texted me again. Then she tried calling me again. And then when she didn't get an answer from me, she went to my sister, her other biological child, and sent her a text message and said, "Have you heard from Kait? Is she okay?" And my sister screen captured it and sent it to me. And she says, "Is this our mother?" And I said, "Yep." And I told her what had happened. She hadn't talked to my sister for 10 years since my wedding. And so, that was the ultimate cutoff. And it's just, I look at that and I think to myself all the time, because after a certain period of time, she usually comes back and continues to try to get back in. And so she hasn't done that this time. It's usually a 2-year threshold. And so we've passed that. And, that was the last straw. That was the last time. And it's not that I didn't want a relationship with my mother. That's all I've ever wanted my entire life. The grief process of losing the mother that I had made up in my head versus the one that I actually got, sort of, very, very different. And so the boundary was hard and it was difficult. But as I said to somebody earlier this weekend, silence is easy in this case because there's no screen capture. There's nothing she can copy and paste. She can't say anything. Silence gives her nothing. All it does is it tells her there's a boundary and you've crossed it. And I don't need to have a conversation with her to tell her what that boundary was. I don't owe her that. If you need to leave a relationship that is not healthy, if it's violent, physically violent, if it's something where you or your children are in jeopardy, I would recommend leaving as soon as you possibly can. If you have time, then just make a plan and exit. Make sure that it is psychologically and physically safe for you and anybody else. If it's a friend and it's somebody who is being mean or nasty or cruel, just stop engaging. You don't have to. You don't owe them anything. In one of my exits of a relationship a couple of years ago, um, there's only really one time where I have actually told somebody that I am eliminating you out of my sphere. Like, I don't want to talk to you ever again. Don't come to me. And it was very measured and it was well thought out and it was written out and left for a week before it was sent. But when it was sent with good purpose and good intention. And at the end of it, I said, "I don't wish you ill will at all. I wish you all the best. Feel free to reach out, but don't ever expect to hear from me because when I'm done, I'm done." We go through so much on a daily basis that why would we continue to subject ourselves to that? And if you're a person who is continually on the outside and people are kind of breaking up with you on a routine basis, that's maybe an indicator to you that maybe your behavior needs to be looked at. And I invite those conversations too, judgment free. I mean, I recognize that we are the sum of our environment, and not everybody was raised in a great environment. And so sometimes we carry baggage and trauma and toxicity with us. And that healing process is something that can take time. I know that I carried that into some of my relationships, and I've had some hard conversations, and I've had to apologize to people for the way that I've behaved. And I don't profess to be perfect. I'm not. I'm human. But taking accountability for my behavior and choosing not to do those things again and actively working on the things that are meaningful to become a better person, whether or not I choose to have that relationship back again, that's what matters. That's how I sleep at night. So, my question to you, if nothing changed with that relationship over the next 5 years, what would that mean to you? Let that be the answer. Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to take a drink because otherwise this is going to turn into an ASMR video. And someone's going to punch that screen. I know it. Thank you for sitting with me. Thank you for submitting your questions. Thank you for providing me feedback and engaging me in dialogue. I love hearing from you. I love receiving your questions and your feedback. Don't stop. Feel free to like, share, subscribe this video. Share it with people who you think might benefit from it. Remember, protect your peace, chase your dreams, and stay unbreakable.